And now we wrap up our event as we begin by looking into the future, exploring our new priorities and our assets. Robert Lightfoot is Vice President of Strategy and Business Development at Lockheed Martin Space. He was a former acting director of NASA, as I just mentioned. As we set our sights on Mars and as spaceflight goes commercial, what policies are we exploring? Let's find out. Robert, thanks so much for joining us. As you just heard, I was just talking for a moment about the UAE and its space program, and it's sending a probe up to Mars. There's this whole other dimension, new terrains to think, not just national security, but also human aspiration, space, et cetera. There are developments in hypersonic areas. And I know that you have your finger on the pulse of some of the emerging technological shifts and changes that are coming from some of our rivals out there. And I'd love to hear what's on your dashboard.
Yes, it's great to be here, first of all. Thanks for having me. It's an interesting time for sure. I think the threat space is continually changing on us, and we have to pay attention to that. Here at Lockheed Martin, one of the things we're paying a great deal of attention to is the hypersonic weapon technologies, the things we need to do to get ready to support that. All the different technologies that we see our competitors and our adversaries working on are the things that we need to do so that we're ready to take on that threat should it actually occur. And I think for us, when we think about, if I just pick hypersonics, for instance, you've got a technology you have to develop. You've got to be able to move fast. You've got to be more agile than maybe have been in the past to be able to keep up with the space. And then you see, as you said, with UAE, you see different countries emerging really to participate in space. There's a bit of a prestige when you said, I've flown an astronaut in space. I participated in the mission to Mars. There's a national pride and national prestige that comes with that. And so we're seeing that play out all across the globe, I think.
I think one of the interesting things about national security threats we've discussed a wide range today, but even with Chairman Smith of the House Armed Services Committee, this sort of confidence that we've got the conventional war thing taken care of, that some of our rivals are either going to go, down into kind of subterranean terror type stuff, or they're going to go up and try and throw things at us and missiles and whatnot. And that's where Iran and North Korea are. How are you engaged in dealing particularly with those potential missile threats that face the United States?
I think for us, and for a lot of the folks in the U.S. industry, is first of all trying to understand what that threat space is. I mean, part of this is you've got certain actors that are more peer actors for us, and then you've got more kind of rogue nations. When you think about North Korea and Iran, they're going to operate differently than say a China and a Russia in terms of how we deal with that threat space. So part of it is doing the analysis around the threat to understand what it is, and then building the system, developing the requirements to deal with a variety of threats, right? So what we're doing here is spending quite a bit of time really understanding what that threat is so we can understand what requirements we need to put in place, and then we'll work on the solution. If you jump right to the solution, you'll miss what you need to hit from a threat standpoint. And those threats are different, right? I think for us, when you think about a hypersonic threat, we have to be able to detect, and you've got to be able to detect fast. These things are going to be moving really quickly. And so for us here at Lockheed Martin Space, we think we're very, very well positioned to be able to help identify that, because you're going to have to do it from higher ground, as we say, low Earth orbit, geosynchronous orbit, all those different orbits give you the opportunity to identify that threat as it comes in. And then you've got to be able to react. So, I mean, it's just it's not the conventional, I would call it 1980s, 1990s perspective around the threats. It's changing, and it's changing pretty rapidly.
Well, I remember I'm sad to say, perhaps, I remember the 1980s. A friend of mine, Jerry Jonas, who was at Sandia National Labs, was part of the Reagan Star Wars program, and there were issues about lasers and shooting, things. And I don't mean to trivialize it, but I mean, at that time we were purporting to do things that we didn't have the technology to do. Today we can do those things. Technology has converged, and I'm sort of interested in the question of, modernization may not quite get it, but there seems to me through AI, interconnectedness of things, new data management, that's changing, that's giving us a strategic leap to be able to do things that we would never have thought possible before. Am I right on that, or am I, dreaming this up?
I think you're exactly right. I think what we have today is numerous platforms available to us, and really the synthesis of the data, and having systems that allow us to, whether we take advantage of machine learning or artificial intelligence, to integrate those systems, right, and become what we're using the phrase intelligent broker, right, where you get the right data at the right time to the right person in the field that needs it, right, whatever that is. And if you look at the missile systems that we've developed over the years, we've had 100 successful intercepts here at Lockheed Martin in our systems. We still need to integrate those even more with other platforms that exist maybe in space to give us better connectivity and then better systems that meet to the warfighter's need. There's not going to be time necessarily for humans, if you think hypersonic, there's going to be time for humans to talk about it and think about it, right? You're going to have systems that think for you and give you decisions that you can make very quickly, right? That not a whole bunch of data, but actually, hey, you got choice A, choice B, right? And you just have to trust that behind that system, you've created the decision making and the algorithms that allow you to make that give you that perspective when you have to make those kind of hard decisions.
Robert, I don't mean to jest about this, but you and I are so different. You just said you've had 100 successful intercepts. If I were saying we've had 100 successful, I mean, you're saying as kind of a matter of fact, like of course you've had 100. But can you go a little bit deeper? And I mean, I think that's extraordinary, and I'd love our audience to know, because we hear a lot about what China can do. We hear what Russia's doing. There's not as much transparency, in my opinion, at least for the layperson out there, about our successes in some of these issues. What does 100 intercepts of incoming missiles or missiles that are aimed at us mean? I mean, I know these are not actual missiles; these are tests, folks. This is not War of the Worlds yet.
That's a great point. I probably should caveat that these are not intercepts we've made where folks have come after us. It's just us testing the systems that we have in place. We were part of the pioneering of the hit-to-kill technology, and feel like we're the world leader in that perspective. There's a lot of people that are involved with us. A lot of partners we have to help us do that. So we have several systems that we've deployed, throughout the last couple of decades that have allowed us to do that. And so when we talk about mission success, our THAAD program has allowed us to have 100% mission success, basically 18 for 18. As we look at that, our PAC-3, which is the Patriot derivative, is 70 successful flights, intercepts. And these are tests, right, that we've done in coordination with our customer in the DoD side of the house that allow us to verify that these systems are ready to go if we need them. The question then becomes, what's the next system? Right? What's the next threat? And you look at hypersonics is one that gets quite a bit of attention right now, and I believe it's a real threat to us. We have to have the systems to be able to test that. But yeah, that's the technology, and it's taken a while to develop that, and so we've just got to get faster. I think the pace of technology is moving so quickly. We're going to have to leverage artificial intelligence, machine learning. We obviously additive manufacturing, where we use 3D parts. We've actually flown some 3D parts as far into space as anyone else ever has on some of our spacecraft, just to, again, develop it's really a technology that we need, but also can we do it in a benign environment or a peaceful environment to test the system out so that we're ready to go when we actually do it.
This may be an inappropriate way to characterize leadership, but if you were to characterize how far we are ahead of, say, China in these technologies and capability, or whether we are at all, how would you frame that? Are we at par? Do we have leadership? Are they ahead in some of these technologies?
Well, that's a great question, Steve. I mean, it depends really on who you talk to, right? And what technology you're talking about. I think in hypersonics, we're going to have to really work to stay in a leadership position. Other areas we're probably ahead from that standpoint, but they're moving quickly. If you look at the appropriations, if you use the United States language, the appropriations in those areas that become threats to us, I think they're increasing. They're rapidly increasing. And so we have to keep up. We have to make sure we're investing in not necessarily I shouldn't say keep up. We need to make sure we're staying ahead, right? It's not a keep up. We need to be working on the next systems. And I think there's been a lot of focus on that, especially with hypersonics. And I think this whole concept of joint all domain operations, command and control, which is bringing all these platforms we have as a country together, allow us to integrate those systems in a way that we can handle multiple threats with the same systems we already have in place.
Is there, I think when we were talking the other day, you said there's a name or term for that. And I think it's one of these interesting things when we were chatting that sometimes people think of security as almost fee for service. How many planes, how many missiles, how much of X can I buy as a government versus the integration of the system, all of these other dimensions of data, AI, these intangible dimensions that harden, strengthen, make more accurate, and kind of complete. Do we have a literacy problem in the Congress and government in understanding that? And how would you frame it?
I think when I think about it in general, if we talk about the technologies of artificial intelligence, machine learning, those kind of technologies that we bring forward, the challenge we have, I think, is you can't put your hands on that. I can't take you to a flight line and show you an aircraft. I can't take you to our facilities out here, like behind me, the GPS facility where we're building a satellite, right? With artificial intelligence and machine learning, it's a little more amorphous, right, and ambiguous in terms of how that allows us to do these things. So one of the things that General Heitman's talked about is taking the requirements for this, being able to integrate all these things through the requirements council, the JROC that the DoD has, which puts a little more finer point on it. Our ability to communicate that value, right, as opposed to a platform that you could, again, put your hands on, that's going to be the challenge for all of us when we think about it, because that's the next step in my mind, is that if we can build the systems that are integrated, again, it's not quite as interesting as seeing the actual platforms of a satellite aircraft, a battleship, or a cruiser. But the integration of those is what's going to be the differentiator for us and discriminator going forward. And it's almost a communications campaign for us to help our customers actually talk about how important that interconnectivity is, and utilizing what we have now in compute power to do the intelligence and help the decision makers make those decisions quickly.
Robert, just as we wrap this up, I want to have you take off your missile defense Lockheed hat and put on your kind of Mars fanboy hat on, and space. I know some of your former colleagues, Ellen Stofan, who heads the National Air and Space Museum, other folks, used to be at NASA and others. But, space is another terrain. We haven't touched it as much today as I would have liked to, but space is important for defense. It's also important for aspiration. I think you were there when Vice President Mike Pence did a big opening, said we're going to Mars. We're going to put more and invest more in Mars. How does our aspirations about space and reaching out, in your experience as the former acting administrator of NASA, tie into these dimensions, both of national security, but where we want to go as human beings? Let's end on a high note, literally a high note.
Literally. I tell you, Steve, to me, the exploration of space, what we always said when I was there, is it's the next frontier. I mean, not to steal something from Star Trek, but as human beings, that is written in our DNA to explore. Why did people cross the Atlantic? Why did folks climb Mount Everest? What was the rationale? It's in our DNA to explore, and it's really to take on to that next level of the unknown. And I think that's the aspirational value of deep space exploration. Why I get excited about the Perseverance is going to launch here in a couple of weeks from the Cape as the next Mars rover that Lockheed Martin put the heat shield on and built some of the parts for. It's just exciting, right? Because we're going to go do something we haven't done before from a discovery standpoint. And there's a kind of an internal desire to learn and to explore and gain that knowledge. All the technologies we do there, I used to say, people used to say, why are you spending all this money on the moon and Mars? And I go, there's no banks on the moon and Mars. All the money's being spent here in the United States, right? And it's those technologies that'll be the ones that actually allow us to do other things, right? And learn how to when we're solving the hardest problems, as a nation, when we're solving the most complex problems, everyone's learning, and that learning just spreads throughout other industries and allows us to go move forward. So that's, to me, is the value. That's why I loved what I did when I was at NASA. That's what I'm doing here at Lockheed Martin. It's really doing something that you're part of that's larger than anything you could do by yourself. Right? Being part of that mission is what's important. When I look at our mission that the Department of Defense has, the mission NASA has, the mission NOAA has, that we participate in here from a Lockheed Martin space standpoint, it's a great place to be because you're working on the most complex problems this country has from a technological standpoint.
Well, we didn't get into the whole side of it, but you work at a company that has the Skunk Works. Today we talked to the acting director of DARPA. Places that innovate and building these new things. Robert Lightfoot, Vice President, Strategy and Business Development, Lockheed Martin Space. Thank you for taking us on a short journey into much of what you're thinking about on the national security front. Thank you so much.